What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is the 10th of October here. It's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to put you on the phone and talk about whatever it is that you feel like talking about today. And I want to talk a little bit about computers because right now I'm just dealing with this incredible amount of frustration dealing with iOS 13.1.2. The golden cut, and now Claire's iPhone 7 appears to need a new battery, you know, and we didn't buy it all that long ago. So I open up this Windows 10 machine to get ready to do the show, and I figure at the same time I'll look for some place locally here where we can get the battery replaced. And it comes on up and says Windows 10 has to do an automatic update, which it proceeds to do over a period of 20 minutes. So I finally get this thing back up and running, and I go on out, and there's this website that allows you to find iPhone service technicians near where you live. And so I type in, you know, where we're living right now, and this Google map of locations appears for a 1/10 of a second and then vanishes and is replaced with an, oops, we're sorry, something went wrong with JavaScript. Now, I'm sure that all of these computers and smartphones and smartwatches and everything are doing an absolutely wonderful job on spying on all of the American people for the government so that we're not thinking those double plus ungood thoughts. But I got to tell you, the usability of the current generation, it's just not there. And it's becoming more trouble than it's worth. All right, so I've had my little rant here, and I'm sure I'm probably going to get a lot of phone calls from people saying, oh, well, you know, that's, you know, planned obsolescence and the rest of it. And yes, it is planned obsolescence. They want you to have to, you know, they want you to buy the iPhone 11. I don't want an iPhone 11. I've got a wonderful iPhone 7 that works really well for me. I just don't know, you know, why the battery had to fail on my wife's phone. And all I want to do is find a place where I can go and get it fixed, and Windows 10 won't let me do that. Anyway, it's rough all over for a lot of people here, and that's why I'm sounding so upset right now. As you're probably already aware, there is a Cat 5 hurricane approaching Japan. They're expecting it's going to hit Fukushima, which, of course, as you are already aware, is filled with all these tanks and large, giant, soft rubber baggies filled with this highly radioactive water. So they're going to have to deal with that. Meanwhile, out in California, they're having major windstorms, and if you remember the last time this happened, PG&E lost several high-tension towers. Why? Well, because management was more interested in their bonuses and dividends to stockholders, and they were not maintaining the equipment. Stuff was getting corroded, stuff was getting weak. And of course, they lost a lot of money in all the lawsuits about the hexavalent chromium, if you remember the movie Erin Brockovich. So they're just barely hanging on there. So what their solution has been this time is they're turning off the power grid. Roughly 800,000 homes in the San Francisco Bay Area, roughly equivalent to 2.5 million people who are being told they're going to have to prepare to live without electricity for the next 4 to 5 days, which is going to be difficult for people who are like dealing with dialysis machines or other medical equipment like that. And I'm sure that the San Franciscans are already headed down to the hardware stores to get emergency generators. And boy, if you look at gas prices right now in California, that's not really going to be a workable solution. But they're looking at these unprecedented power cuts, 2.4 million people. This is third world. I'm sorry, this is third world quality infrastructure when they have to do something like that. And then, of course, we've got the weather that's coming in. Apparently, we're expecting heavy storms here in Indiana tomorrow, but the big one is coming in over the northern Great Plains, the Dakotas. It is being described literally as apocalyptic, and they're expecting that it is going to basically be the end of the growing season, and everybody is concerned because the crops are not ready to be harvested. I mean, they can try and pull in as much as possible they possibly can and try and put it into storage. But folks, I'm giving you a heads up here. There are going to be food shortages this winter, and you better start making your preparations for it now. And that means, stockpiling as much as you can, a lot of dry goods. Don't waste anything. It's shocking how much food waste there is in this country, where people will, they'll eat something and then just throw the rest of it in the trash can. Don't do that. Get baggies. Get Tupperware. You're going to need it. You really are. And apparently over there in the Twin Cities, they're expecting snow this weekend. And again, we're still in the middle of October. So apparently over in Spokane, Washington, it was raining, and late at night it turned into snow. There's even an expectation we could get a little dusting of snow here as well. That'll be fine here. All right, so let's talk about Donald Trump and this argument over the war in Syria and Turkey, trying to figure out what's going on. And I've come up with a theory. And the theory is simply this. Trump understands that the economy is not going to hold together until next year's election. So he's looking for other ways to win over the voters, and a good way to do that, of course, is to keep his campaign promise to get out of all these endless wars. Now, of course, that has not made him a lot of friends in the military-industrial complex. The neocons are certainly not happy about it. And sadly, a lot of liberal supporters of Donald Trump probably have stock portfolios loaded up with defense contract stocks, because right now they make a lot of money. Military-industrial complex, they have tremendous political power. They like fighting. They think fighting is cool. They think blowing stuff up and killing people is cool. And they make a lot of money. But Trump is saying it's time to bring our soldiers home. And I agree with that. Let's put them down there on that southern border, or put them to work repairing our infrastructure. I'm sure a lot, especially the Army Corps of Engineers, let's get them up on those PG&E towers and make sure everything's tightened down. One thing that's very, very obvious when you look at Trump trying to end the wars here is that the people you see objecting most loudly to America's withdrawal from the Middle East are those who are the most enthusiastic about plunging us in the first place. Yes, we'll have fun over there in Syria. We'll have fun in Afghanistan. We'll have fun in Iraq, or at least we'll have fun being here in Washington, D.C., watching what's going on in Iraq. And don't forget, Iraq was started with that lie about the incubators. They lie us into these wars. They lied about Saddam's nuclear weapons. They lied about Assad's sarin gas. They really do think you are all idiots because you keep falling for it over and over and over and over again. Now, there's already talk about kicking Turkey out of NATO. And that's coming mostly from the EU. And I still think the situation could spiral completely out of control here. Now, one person who has not been consistent on the view of the war is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, because she was against U.S. involvement in Syria, and now, of course, she's for it. She's joined several other lawmakers to blast President Trump for keeping U.S. troops in Syria. How dare you bring those Americans back home to the country of their birth? What's wrong with you, Don? So what we're seeing right now is a split within the GOP Certainly Trump is battling the neocon wing. And remember, the neocons are all about war. They always have been, ever since the 1990s and the Project for the New American Century. In fact, there was a policy document they wrote, Rebuilding America's Defenses, which said, we need a new Pearl Harbor to motivate the American people into a century of warfare to conquer planet Earth here. And of course, that new Pearl Harbor happened on 9/11. But again, a big problem, though, is who within Congress is invested in these defense contractors. And my guess would be, and it is a guess, probably most of them, because that's where the money is being made. Tesla's not making a lot of money right now. Neither is Boeing. Where would you put your investment? Now, here in the United States, it is a requirement. The president put his wealth into some kind of a blind trust so that his own financial well-being cannot be influenced, won't influence his decisions. Now, the Clintons kind of cheated that. Trump, of course, has got so much wealth, he's put it in the hands of his family, but I'm sure they make phone calls to each other here. But there's no such rule for the Congress. There's no such rule for the Congress. If you're a representative or you're a senator, you can make all the investments you want based on the information you get in the halls of Congress. It's called insider trading, by the way, and it should be technically illegal, and it actually is technically illegal. Some years ago, Congress actually looked at a bill to specifically say members of the House and Senate may not use the information that they are made privy to inflate their own investment portfolios. Needless to say, that bill was voted down. In fact, they sent it back to committee in a body bag. Over in Turkey, I mean, things are heating up, and I still think this thing could spin completely out of control. Erdogan is very upset that the European Union is calling his Syria operation an invasion, which, yeah, when you send uniformed soldiers and artillery across the border into somebody else's country, it's an invasion. But for some reason, Erdogan, he thinks that's inappropriate, and he's now issued a threat that if the EU continues to call the Syria operation an invasion, that Turkey is simply going to open up the gates and send 3.6 million new refugees to Europe. So like I said, this could spin out of control. We already know the problems that Europe is dealing with all of these refugees and immigrants. We already know that. 3.6 million more, that's going to be an issue. It's going to be an issue. I don't know how the EU is going to respond. I don't see the EU backing down. I think the EU is going to stand there and say, look, I'm sorry. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and smells like a duck, it's a duck. And in this case, the duck is an invasion here. All right. We're going to take a phone call here from Alex in Maine. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I need to open with first. You stole me from Alex Jones. I've been following you since then, man.
Oh, I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty. I'm horribly guilty. I'm so ashamed.
And I got to add, we were hoping you'd come back up here instead of over there, but you're still technically back. But
well, we're still technically back, and like I said, the reason we came to Indiana is that we have family here. That, I mean, the kids are growing up. We want to be part of their life. Two of our family members are medical professionals, which is kind of convenient having around. When Claire suffered her back fracture almost 2 years ago, it was 90 days before she could get into Straub and find out just what had happened. And, we can't deal with that kind of quality of medical care. Now we don't have to. Something goes wrong, we make a phone call, we're in the clinic immediately.
Great. That's fantastic. What my point was, I have to admit, it's going to sound a little selfish, but we have a huge problem over here in Maine with where our funds are going and where they are not going.
Join the club.
Over here, they are giving semi-new vehicles to Somalians, leading them by the hand to job opportunities that they're capable of doing, and then they give them apartments on top of welfare and food stamps almost as soon as they hit our soil. But in this same state, we have tent towns, dozens and dozens of people behind almost every Walmart, Target, Martin's.
And you've got a hard winter coming on. You're going to have people literally freezing to death in those tents. And
I'm wondering if we're going to approach the same numbers that you were speaking about that Britain hit. The 16,000?
It was something like 16,000. And, you know, we could even see people in San Francisco, you know, without electricity for 5 days, you know, they could die. And boy, talk about the lawsuits piling up then.
It sounds like if they could make that go away while allowing it to happen, you know, maybe one of the Democrats' problems will just go away.
Well, again, there's an agenda behind all of this refugee, illegal immigrants. We know the Democrats want the illegal immigrants because they're going to vote Democrat next year because they're going to get free stuff. That's the Democrats' entire campaign platform for 2020. Vote for us. We'll take stuff away from the white people and we'll give it to you Hispanics. That's their entire...
They did that here.
Yeah. And, you know, they almost pulled it off in 2016. It's estimated that at least 3 million illegal immigrants who are not legally supposed to vote did succeed in voting. And, the Democratic lawyers went around to all these states to literally overturn these laws that, you know, that said you had to show voter ID. You know, you have to show your ID for absolutely everything in this country except for when you vote, which is supposed to be the most important part of your franchise.
Absolutely. I have white hairs now, and I have to be carded to buy a beer.
Yeah. Oh, they do the same thing here. They were doing the same thing. Actually, no, they don't do that here, but they certainly were in Hawaii. There was a law that everybody had to be carded. And, you know, I'd say, look, white hair, beard, the whole thing. And then I used to joke with them and say, well, you know, I lied to you. I'm actually 12 years old. I only look like this because I grew up next to a nuclear reactor. And they'd all laugh and everything. But, yeah, it's, you know, show your ID. But again,
what they do here for the driver's licenses is they ask them, did you drive home? And then with no test, no written test or anything, they literally hand the license over to these people on faith. That's what they're doing in Maine.
I hope it's going to be that easy for me because I've got about a month left before I have to get Indiana plates on the car and get a new Indiana driver's license. And then, of course, Claire, after she has her cataract surgery, we're going to put her through a driving school again. And then she's going to have to get a license. And this state is under the Real ID law. So when I go down to get my driver's license, I have to take my birth certificate, I have to take my passport, I have to take my old driver. It's just, it runs around. But if you vote, you don't need to show that ID. And the whole point of the Real ID system when it was set up was two things: making sure that American jobs went to American citizens and making sure that only Americans were voting in our elections. So why do they even still have the Real ID system? It's a complete hideous waste of money because it's not being used for what it was supposed to do.
They say that there was like 3 million or so illegals voting, but I wonder how many of them did it properly and didn't make it to that statistic.
Well, it's impossible to say. I mean, it is an estimate. It really is an estimate. Anyway, Alex, stay on the line. I'm going to hold you over the commercial break, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And once again, RBN is holding out their hand for new coins. 3 coins in the RBN song in there. I have to talk to Claire about that. And we're talking with Alex up in Maine, and he's talking about just the sheer volume of money being taken from legal American citizens to support the lifestyle of people who are not even supposed to be here. Why do we have Somali refugees here in the United States of America? Did we bomb Somalia? Was it our fault?
Well, we did want to take their fishing territory away from them.
Well, the U.S. government wants to take everything away from everybody. But, I remember after the Vietnam War was over, we had this huge migration of Vietnamese expats who had supported the United States position. And they were brought here to the United States of America, and they were given 7-Eleven franchises. And it's just obscene. We're being forced to pay for it all. We, the American people, we pay for the guns, we pay for the bullets, we pay for the bombs here. Then when, regardless of the outcome of the war, we're required to pay for the victims, not just our kids, but, the other victims. And it's just this giant money-sucking machine that is attached to our wallets permanently. And I don't know about you, it's time for it to stop. I got to be very honest. I've been saying I think we're going to lose this round of wars that we're in right now. I actually hope it happens, because it would break this bad habit the United States government has of trying to prosper itself and its stockholders entirely with war. And maybe we could actually go back to being a country that builds factories, that makes things people want to buy, rather than are forced to buy because they're at war. But if you look at American manufacturing right now, our biggest business is the machinery of war. Death is our biggest industry right now.
As a veteran, I actually come up with an idea, an exit strategy last night while listening to you.
Okay, good.
Now, this is going to sound a little crazy, but what if we asked Putin and Xi for help transporting all of our troops out rapidly? Nobody's going to sit there and look at the Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans leaving together and think, you know what, I'm going to go after that. This is a great false flag idea. Everybody's going to believe it. Why don't we just take a couple of pot shots to keep them in here? Not with all three. Not with all three of them, with all of their intelligence, all of their intelligences working together. And I really think that Putin he'd acquiesce. Let's get you out of there.
It's a good idea. It's actually a good idea. Of course, Putin himself is going to stay back in Russia after that near miss over Ukraine. If we could just get, as many different countries as possible to just start evacuating everybody. The big problem, of course, are the Kurds, who feel it's their land. It's worth a lot of money. The Syrians think it's their land. And, again, we're back in that situation about, no, we're not going to leave. You're going to leave. But I think in terms of getting several nations to get on in there and get the Americans out of there, I mean, if Trump really wants to end these endless wars, he's got to start moving on it now, because, we're 13 months away from the next election. And he has not... basically, he has not made good on the promises, the important promises that he made. Hillary's still not in jail. We've got a grand total of 70 miles of border wall that's been built. Ooh, I'm impressed, a whole 70 miles. And, he dropped the investigation into vaccine safety. He dropped the investigation into voting integrity. The big promise that he made that everybody resonated with was getting us out of these endless wars and meddling in all these other countries. And I think, I'm beginning to think that Trump's thinking is the economy is not going to hold together until this time next year. And his advisors have to be telling him the Democrats are going to drop the blame on Trump. And the only way he can evade that, the only way he can survive that, is to do some really good things for the American people.
The the Kurds do have a card up their sleeve, sir. Do you know how many of them are in the Turkish military?
Okay, I think we missed a commercial.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's
but
not
there are a
that's
lot
not your
of
fault.
Kurds in that military.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, there are a lot of Kurds over there, and they. Yeah,
They're not going to blow up their own people. I think that they might defect from the Turkish military and something bad is going to happen. If it were me, I would wait until the invasion. Like, I pretend like, yeah, I'm going along with you. I'm totally living in Turkey now.
all right.
And then once I get over there, I'm using your equipment.
There's our commercial there. All right, well, listen, Alex, I'm going to let you go here. We're going to try and get our show back in sync. And again, this Windows 10. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take another phone call. This one from Jim in Illinois. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. What Trump did on Monday, allowing Turkey to go after the Kurds, probably cost them election, because right now you have Republicans who are not happy about it. You have the evangelicals. Evangelicals are very, very unhappy about it. And you have Israel. And plus now with the impeachment situation getting stronger and stronger, I think Trump might just realize, you know what, there's nothing I can do. I'm going to, maybe run, and if I don't get reelected, just deal with it.
A lot of people have said exactly the same thing. It's almost like he wants to run again, but he's not really serious about a second term in office. Tucker Carlson, I think, said that about 3 months ago. And to me, it looks like the same thing. We were talking just the other day about, how much he likes to go on out and golf. And yes, technically, these are all business meetings. But yeah, I think he just wanted to be president for the vanity of it all, like the way he did his reality TV show. He wasn't really serious about it. It was like, look at me, I'm a TV star, and now I'm the star of the White House. And yeah, he may just throw the White House to Hillary Clinton just to get out of the job.
Right, and not only that, though, as far as Turkey, you have to keep in mind, he does have 2 Trump Towers over there, and I think like 100 and some businesses that he has in Turkey. So I was wondering, do you think a deal might have been made where the president of Turkey said, if you want your business to be around, you better do this favor for me?
Could very well have been a case of extortion here. My first question would be that if Trump has got all these businesses in these war-torn countries, why is he not divesting? And again, this gets back to the issue. There's supposed to be a presidential blind trust. So supposedly Trump's son is now in charge of the financial empire. Why is he leaving these assets in these high-risk areas?
That's a very good question. Only he knows that, and I don't know if we would ever find the answer. And the final thing, what do you think about those 2 guys that got arrested last night trying to leave the country?
Are you talking about the Ukrainians?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we're entering into a phase here right now where both sides of the impeachment debate are just going to start trying to arrest assets for the other side. We could see the entire Congress go to jail if this keeps going.
That's true. So, well, Michael, I'm going to let you go on that note. You take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. I mean, that would be cool. Throw the entire Congress in prison. I'll stand there at the bars and throw peanuts at them. All right, so getting over to Israel. Phone lines are open right now, 800-313-9443. Over in Israel, as you know, they just celebrated Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and apparently Israeli settlers, hundreds, raided the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, and they raided the Ibrahim Mosque in the old city of Hebron. In fact, the Israeli occupation forces prevented the Palestinians from entering the Ibrahim Mosque and allowed the thousands of settlers who basically raided the Muslim holy site, same thing with Al-Aqsa, and they went on in performing these Talmudic rituals. Now, to put this in context, let's say that you are, for example, a Christian, and you go to church on Christmas Day, maybe, or Easter, And all of a sudden, there's an army outside the church that says, you cannot come in because we've got, this voodoo tribe coming on in. Celebrate Baron Samedi and whatever else it is that people in voodoo do. But I mean, that's basically how serious this is and how infuriating it is. Can you imagine how Catholics would feel if they went to Vatican City and it was surrounded by armed forces, which if they don't keep their hands off the little kiddies could actually happen? That's how serious this is. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I want to talk about Trump, but I want to talk about first the evangelicals. That means Pat Robertson, where Trump's going to lose the mandate of heaven by leaving Syria. Pat Robertson's a piece of garbage. Like, you think?
Wait. Let me back up and look at that word. But
okay.
Let me look at that word. Mandate. Is Pat gay?
Yeah, isn't that? He's not
popped
diverse,
into my head.
Pat Robertson. But Mike, you know what's sad? Where was freaking Pat Robertson when ISIS was that mandated to be brought in by the West into Syria, throwing babies and women down wells, Mike? That's what they did. Where was Pat Robertson and the evangelicals? You know, when it came to that.
Well, the people being thrown down the wells, they're not evangelicals, so who cares about them? I mean, it's the same kind of disconnected attitude you saw in ancient Rome, where the Romans had a great deal of respect for each other, but as far as the Christians and conquered armies who got thrown into the Colosseum, that's what they deserve.
That means I'm a Catholic. I'm not evangelican or cool, so that means that I can be thrown down a well and they won't care either. I mean, Pat Robertson is just...
I'm a Presbyterian, and the Presbyterian teaches that when you die, your soul flies up on a garage roof where it's safe for all eternity, unless you've been evil, and then it gets sucked under a car and a dog chews it up.
And if you go back in time, if they put it in where it's a purple roof with like yellow polka dots on it, it'd be like special, even more special. Yeah. I mean, Mike, you know what's sad? People believe this crap. I'm sorry, but I'm going to go back. Trump's not put in by God. Trump is a human being. Mike Pence is a human being. Pat Robertson's a human being. The dude is garbage because he's just propagating, like, just to make money. That's what it is. And these people, they go along with it. It's just such a weak mind. And I get so angry. I'm like, where was Pat Robertson on the Iraq War, Mike?
You're fighting the verdict of history, because throughout the evolution of the human race, there have always been those who want to control the rest of the population around them. And sometimes it's for benign reasons. We all have to go out and kill a mammoth today. And way they would do that is they would claim to speak for the gods. And if you look at all of these really ancient civilizations, they were usually led by some kind of a shaman. And it wasn't until much later that you started seeing a division of power and authority, where there was kind of a civil warrior leader who relied on the shaman to keep the population in line. But we've been dealing with this for something like 8,000 years, and it's just not going to go away that easily. I wish it would. I think this rule by, the will of the gods is highly destructive, and we're seeing it right in front of our eyes right now. And, I think we ought to be making better choices and better decisions based on facts, logic, and law. And
Mike, I found Trump because, like I said, I voted for him. I don't support what he's doing now, but Mike Pence is like an evangelical, right? Like, he's a believer, and so is Mike Pompeo. But if you look at Nikki Haley came out against, and Lindsey, you would think if you're Trump, if I was Trump, like, these people are not your friends. None of these people in Washington are his friend. But he puts these people in, but they're not his friend. So I don't understand why he bothers with them in the first place. If he, like I said, if he wanted to drain the swamp, I've been saying he would have not put any of these people near him at the beginning of his presidency.
I agree
you know
with
what
you.
I mean? I don't know
agree
what's
with
going
you.
on. Like,
Well, I think
you know,
I think what Trump was thinking at the time was he was going to be magnanimous in victory. It had caught everybody by surprise that he defeated Hillary Clinton. And so he figured, I'm going to go into the White House and I'm going to tell everybody, you still got your jobs. I'm the new boss, but you still have your jobs. You all work for me now, thinking that because that's the way it would work in the world of business, that these people would now do what he said. It's not how it works in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., yeah, there's a lot of money floating around, but it's really about the power and the ability to influence things. And it was Trump's biggest single mistake. If I had won the White House, I would have gone in there and just said, you're all fired. And the president does have the authority
do that, Mike.
the president does have the authority. Yeah, he can still do that if he wants to. But he didn't. And everybody just got used to staying in the White House and in the White House offices and playing the games they've been playing underneath Obama the whole time.
And it's been 3 years already. So, I mean, you know, if he don't think he's going to win, Mike, if I don't think I'm going to win, hell with maybe getting assassinated. I would go full tilt against these people because as it is now, you know, nothing's getting done. And if you want to try to win, I mean, it's just and to the last caller, I got to switch gears on Turkey with the Turkey would crush the Kurds. Okay, Turkey is not Saudi Arabia. Turkey's got a real military. And
yes, they do.
The YPG and the PKK, they are terrorists to Turkey because they kind of blow up stuff over there. You know, like,
yes.
You know, it's like what the West is with the MEK, which is in Iran, which is like a Saudi type of Wahhabist. You know, there's different groups and different factions. People got to understand it. But in terms of a military, Turkey's not like a pushover, and Erdogan's not stupid. The guy's a survivor. You know, he's a survivor.
He's definitely
and he knows
a
how
survivor.
to play the game. Like,
and he's willing to take risks, which is what I think he's doing with this threat about the 3.6 million refugees headed for Europe if they dare call his operation an invasion. And I don't think he's bluffing. I think he'll really do it.
Yeah, and I mentioned this a while ago. It's called a book called The Weapons of Mass Migration, where you can use migration for a political tool for an end game. And you can send in refugees and flood the country and promise you'll stop. Remember they offered Erdogan, or they gave him $6 million or $6 billion or something. Remember that was like years ago?
Yeah.
They offered him all this money. So that's not in the realm of not being possible. Well, they'll do that again to stop this flow of refugees. But Mike, you know what I find odd before I get off the phone, of the Syrians that drove over people in Germany. The Syrian people are not like that. Like when Assad and the Iranian Republican Guard and Hezbollah and the Russians kicked out the jihadis, the Syrian people were cheering. So the people fleeing the country are the losers, the ones that don't want to stay and fight for their own country. They're the troublemakers and the criminals that are leaving, and I want to know who the hell's paying their bill.
I would like to know that too as well. And Mike, I need to step away from the computer for just a minute. Please put some music on. I'll be right back. And I am back, and I apologize for the short interruption here. But right now, I am the only person in this building, and something was happening involving the show's mascot that I had to go deal with. All right, so we're back here. We're talking. Okay, Dustin is apparently gone here, and yeah, I'm having a tough time figuring out what Trump thinks he's going to accomplish. Maybe he's one of these people who just can't handle the stress of running another campaign, and he's going to self-destruct. And that could very well be what's going on here. The part that really scares me is they're already shoving Hillary at us. It's like the deal has already been made. Trump is going to be out. They're already showing Joe Biden the door. Elizabeth Warren is not going to survive her Pocahontas scandal. And so, Hillary's in the running. She's got a campaign going. She's raising money. The question is, can she raise enough money? And she's already out there saying that, this is going to be a rematch because she beat Trump before and she got cheated. So that's her campaign strategy, to go back to all the people who gave her money before and said, it was money well spent because I beat him and I can do it again. There's never a good asteroid around when you need one. All right, we're going to start a phone call with Paul in West Palm Beach, and we're probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. So what's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Long-time visitor to your website, like nearly 20 years, and I used to call a few years back ago. This whole Kurds and Turkey thing, I think it's actually giving President Trump a lot of credibility in the eyes of certain countries. One is Russia, two is Iran, 3 is Syria, because Syria and Turkey negotiated. It ain't like Syria was blind that Turkey was going to come and bomb the Kurds. They've been negotiating that for months, if not years, basically, right?
Well, I have to say I'm not in agreement for the simple reason. I'm sure that countries like Russia are glad this is all starting to happen. Okay, stay on the line, Paul. We're going to come right back to you after these few words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Paul in West Palm Beach. And I think probably the one thing that everybody listening to this program can agree on is Trump has created one heck of a mess with this very sudden decision to pull our troops out of Syria. Now, I'm glad our troops are coming home. They should have never been there in the first place. But you've got the military-industrial complex is now ticked off. They don't want the money to stop. You've got the neocons are ticked off because their entire political platform is war, war, and more war. We have an unknown number of liberals who are probably invested very heavily in the military-industrial complex. And so I think the big problem is a lot of countries are going to applaud the fact that the wars are finally coming to an end. I mean, it's been 18 years since we went into Afghanistan. I mean, how long does this have to go? I mean, it's long enough to qualify as a world war. Let's be honest about that right now. But here is where there's a concern. Trump did not create these wars. Well, he certainly exacerbated the one in Syria. But most of these wars, Libya, Afghanistan, and so forth, came from the previous administration. And everybody understands that every 4 to 8 years we get a new government, and that very often the commitments made by the previous governments are going to get thrown into the shredder. But that's kind of an abstraction. What Trump has done today, I think, is going to place a lot of doubt in leaders of other countries about whether the United States government can be trusted. I notice that North Korea is already back to saying we can't trust anything that they say. And so it really was a no-win situation for Trump to do. And I'm still trying to figure out, what did he think he was going to accomplish?
Are you asking me, you ready for me?
I'm ready for you.
I almost liken it to the Vietnam War. If you don't leave now, when? Okay,
yes.
And you pointed out all the reasons why we shouldn't have been there. 9/11 was a hoax, so everything that we're living in today is under the umbrella of 9/11, and
yes.
So he's trying to clean up the mess. And as far as maybe the important countries like Russia and China, because Russia and China is working with Iran, are seeing maybe they're trying to get out of this mess. And if not now, when? That's I'm glad that.
You raise an important comparison here because when we got kicked out of Vietnam, the world saw it as a military loss. The United States had lost a war. There was no gray area. You know, we got our rear ends whipped for fair on that one. And so I'm sure that there's a lot of people right now. Paul, stay on the line. I want to come back to you after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And currently we're talking with Paul in West Palm Beach. And Paul, you brought up an important comparison. And that was, of course, the end of the war in Vietnam, which was perceived globally as a loss by the then presumed invincible United States military. And it did cost a lot of political capital. The damage lasted a decade. In fact, what was it that I think it was George Herbert Walker Bush, when he started a war over there, he said, you know, the curse of Vietnam has been lifted and we're back in business here. And we know that we are in the middle of a planned series of wars to gain control over the Middle Eastern and now South American oil territories to shackle them to the doctor. This came out from General Wesley Clark. So here is the problem. How does Trump get us out of Syria without it being seen as a military defeat? And he had the same problem with Afghanistan. They were talking about, you know, getting our kids out of Afghanistan, but John Bolton kind of messed that up, which is why he got fired. So, you know, Trump has definitely created one heck of a mess here, because if we get kicked out of Afghanistan and we basically are getting kicked out of Syria, then the war with Iran is off.
Well, first of all, General Wesley Clark didn't mention any South American countries. Okay?
No, that was added to the list later on.
Okay.
Venezuela.
Yeah, but General Wesley Clark didn't mention it, though. Okay, maybe another list came out, but he did not mention any South American countries.
No, he didn't. It was added later.
Okay, but General Clark didn't add it later, did he?
No, he didn't.
Okay, thank you. But the main point is, I, in my heart, still hoping that Trump is a dove. And he hasn't started any wars, at least not that we know of.
Well, he kind of escalated Syria rather badly, and he did it with lies.
Well, he didn't fall for, from your own website, there might have been false flag gas operations that somebody tried to blame Syria on, but that didn't turn out to be true. And then Trump bombed Syria, but not killing anybody. Okay, right? I think Trump is...
I think the point that you're missing here is that Trump, as the military commander-in-chief, he has got an obligation to make sure that before he pulls that trigger, that it's pointed at a real, genuine bad guy. And in hindsight, looking back at these obvious false flag chemical weapons attacks in Syria, he should have been suspicious right from the beginning, but it didn't happen that way. There was the false flag attack, and immediately the missiles were flying at $1 million a pop.
But remember also when Bill Clinton came in, all of a sudden the World Trade Center bombings were, the first World Trade Center bombings happened like within a couple months after he was. So that was all planned before. So maybe this whole operation was planned before even President Trump took office, to suck him deeper into Syria. And if it wasn't for Putin, the number one peacemaker of the world right now, who knows where we would be at right now, right?
Well, you're absolutely right about that last one. And, there's no questioning that the FBI botched up that 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. The van was parked in the wrong location. The FBI literally told their informant inside that terrorist group, leave the explosives live. They really did want to bring down that at least one of those towers to get the war agenda going. But they couldn't, so then they had to wait until 2001. Then they had to wait till 2001. And by then, the momentum had shifted, and they'd lost the initiative.
Yeah. So I think, occasionally there's a few people that I trust, and if they make a mistake, it's an honest mistake, but you're one of them. I also appreciate James Perloff, Brother Nathaniel, and M.S. King. Have you ever read any of their books, James Perloff's books?
I've read a few. He and I disagree on a couple of issues.
Oh yeah, probably yeah. Junkyard in a tornado, or tornado in a junkyard. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Okay.
All these wars, I'm convinced, in the Middle East, we're fighting for Israel, and now it turns out to be Israel is cozied up with Saudi Arabia. And I just rewatched the movie Kingdom with,
yes.
I don't think Saudi Arabia and Israel were that close in 2007. They've gotten closer, and that was a propaganda movie against Saudi Arabia, big time. And Hollywood was telling them, Saudi Arabia, you better get on the bandwagon with Israel, or this is what we're going to paint you as. And
well, I think you're oversimplifying the issue a little bit. Obviously, Israel was hoping to use the United States to militarily control the Middle East, but now Israel appears to be rethinking that. They're now working with the other Middle Eastern nations to sign non-aggression pacts with the blessing of Benjamin Netanyahu. So Israel is no longer convinced that we are this invincible military power that they can rely on.
Ain't the saying go, how can you make a treaty when you don't even have your border set?
Well, I mean, that's always been a problem for Israel. They've never drawn their borders. They've never even written a constitution. But I think probably what they're going to do, if they're serious about this, they're going to go back to the Green Line.
Oh, I don't think they're serious about anything over there. You can't trust them at all. And they just prove that every single day of the week. But, let me give you the solution for the Middle East also, okay?
Okay, real quick, because we've got other callers waiting on the line.
If Israel let Jews marry non-Jews in Israel and vice versa, I think that would take care of 90% of the problem in the Middle East. Because as it stands right now, Jews cannot marry non-Jews in Israel. So that's a segregated country, apartheid at best.
You're never going to get that past the Orthodox. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, listen, Paul.
That's a solution. It's an easy solution. Thank you.
It's not an easy solution. You're never going to get it past the Orthodox community. Anyway, Paul, we're going to let you go because the phone lines are loading up here, and we're going to switch over to Joe in Nome, Alaska. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I had to answer for Dustin what Trump's motive is. You got to think like a gangster, okay? And
yes.
I think they got some kind of credo, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer.
Yes.
So I just thought I'd throw that out there, but and sitting here waiting to get on, I thought maybe I might relate a story that might interest you about September 11th, because you did segue into that a little bit.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah. So I had a house guest recently, a former Special Forces Marine,
Yes.
used to guard President Reagan at the White House.
Yes.
And I asked him about where he was and what he was doing on September 11th, 2001.
Yeah.
And he said, well, he was interrupted from his work building a stone patio for a high-priced lawyer in the Northeast.
Yes.
From his wife, and his wife was going on about her his cousins and brothers-in-law trying to get to the World Trade Center that morning, and
Yes.
saying that the subways were all shut down and
Yes.
nothing was moving.
Yes.
And I said, I'm scratching my head. I'm going, well, so, what did you think? What's your takeaway from that? He said, well, look, it seems obvious. September 11th went down in the morning. It was during rush hour, but most people hadn't made it to work yet.
Yes.
And so that's why so few people died. Now, if you were truly a terrorist, wouldn't you want to kill as many people as you wanted, as you could?
Well, I mean, at the very, very least, you're absolutely right. You've made a very valid point here. And if it had been a genuine terrorist attack, they would have just let those buildings fall over flat and take out several city blocks. But they didn't. They dropped all three of those buildings into their own foundations.
Yeah, sure. Well, it wasn't me being right, because at the time I didn't know what to think. But it was this Marine's first supposition. I said, well, what did you do? He said, I went back to work building the patio because I knew it was our own government that did this, and I wasn't going to participate in any fallout from any of that business. But, this guy is threatening to commit suicide, out here in Nome, and because he has a hard time dealing with the realities that, a lot of it.
Well, I certainly understand that. I mean, it can get a little overwhelming at times. Anyway, Joe, got to let you go. The phone lines are loading up here again, and I want to get to all these callers before the next commercial break here. So let's go to Paul in New Jersey. Aloha, Paul. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, I'm very skeptical about what Donald Trump has done in the Kurdish region of northeastern Syria, primarily because, as we know, there's 11,000 ISIS fighters detained there. And all this time, they've been holding it for how many months, if not years, there.
Okay.
And the Kurds have postponed dealing with these people. They should have had trials. And by the way, it's fine with me if they set up Islamic mock trials and sentence them all to death. I would be fine with that. But the point is, Donald Trump and his administration, behind the scenes with his military contact, should have made that happen already. So what he's obviously doing is he wants those ISIS fighters to get free. We know that's going to happen, all 11,000 of them, and they're going to act as mercenaries, helpers, or whatever.
Well, that's what they've been doing all along. That's what they've been doing all along. Yeah.
So the Kurds deserve what they're going to get as much as the carnage that really belongs right in the lap of Donald Trump, because he's doing this intentionally. And you know who else gets made look bad in this? I'm going to tell you what this is about, part of two. Yeah, this is Trump's 4D chess genius. He's going to make all the doves and the non-interventionists like Rand Paul and you and me, right, we're going to look like naive fools, and the carnage that ensues is going to be dumped right on our laps. And that's why even AOC was smart enough to say that we should have kept the troops there, because she sees this carnage coming, and she doesn't want the blame deposited on her doormat either.
Well,
so
I mean, we know.
Did not. Yeah, whenever you hand off a territory like this or hand off something like this, you don't just leave them with unresolved issues like 11,000 ISIS fighters held in your prison. You just don't do that.
Well, a lot of those ISIS fighters were allowed to become refugees They're up in Europe. They're here in the United States of America. I mean, there is a clear paper trail that ISIS were working as mercenaries for the United States military. They were doing it in Libya. They were doing it in Iraq. And again, they probably don't want to go back and live in their home countries because they're not well regarded, which means we're going to wind up with, them living here as well. Anyway, listen, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to go to Miles in Maine. Aloha, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Michael. Aloha. The last
Aloha.
call, not so good. The one before him was very good call by the other call. But Michael, I look at these people and I see them. They're so myopic and they're so singular-minded. They're on Trump. They're saying Trump's not doing this, Trump's not doing that. Trump's got Israel to dance around and all these other issues. The people want everybody home. I think it's universally agreed upon from the wars.
Yes.
And Trump's trying to do it. Whether he's leaving these people, he's not leaving these people behind because, first of all, they really have no stake there. It's not their country. It's Syria's country. So if anything, they may be
I think they would probably disagree with that. They would disagree with you on that one. The whole argument has been all along the Kurds want an independent Kurdistan carved out of Syria and Iran and a couple of other small places, and they're not asking for a lot, but the countries that own that land right now are saying, we're not going to go, you're going to go. I mean, this Kurdistan issue has been around for a very, very long time.
Well, Israel wants independent Israel carved out of Palestine, too, but I'm not interested in seeing that happen. So,
it's too late. It's already they've already done it.
Yeah. And so let's not repeat history in the case of the Kurds. The Kurds, it's not their country. Their country's somewhere else. That's where they need to go. But anyway,
where's the Kurds' country? Where's the Kurds' country?
I don't know, but it's not in Syria. Syria did not take their country. That's a positive. I mean, Syria did not create any type of...
Well, the Kurds had to come from somewhere.
Well, so
they had
did
to
the
come from
Palestinians.
somewhere. Well, no, the Palestinians have been living on that land for thousands of years. It was all these trans... Look, let me finish my thought here. I mean, there was this recently completed genetic research that shows that the Ashkenazi Jews are actually predominantly European. They're not from that part of the world. They're not from Palestine. They're predominantly European. They've got less Hebrew blood in them than your average ISIS fighter. I mean, it's almost. It would be funny if it wasn't so serious.
Exactly. But anyway, and I love, of course, Tom from Florida, and the same with our friend Dustin in New Jersey. They're both great guys, but the issue here is Trump's got to. He's trying to do something. He can't do it in an overt manner where he's telegraphing everything that he's doing, but he's trying to do some things. Give him the opportunity to get these guys out of here. He's trying to get Bolton out of the way. He's trying to get the troublemakers out of the way.
Well, Bolton's already gone.
Well,
okay.
I understand
Bolton's
that.
Already gone.
Bolton's not the only one. He's had quite a few he's tried to get rid of. Trump's got to dance around all these people, Sheldon Adelson, Israel,
Trump
and everybody.
Doesn't need to dance around these people. Trump is the president of the United States of America, and everybody who works in the administration serves at the pleasure of the president. The president can ask him to resign at any time. And a lot of people are scratching their heads and wondering why it took so long for Bolton.
In terms of international relations, he has to dance around these other countries, particularly Israel. So when he's withdrawing these troops from Syria, I think it sends a good message, like one of the previous callers mentioned. I think it uplifts his opinion in terms of these other countries. Yeah, you mentioned Trump
I disagree.
The issue in Israel.
I disagree because Israel is now talking.
I definitely think the other countries look at him making this move and saying there's some possibilities with him. But, you know, you mentioned previously, you said how he shot
Miles,
off
I got to let you go.
What did he hit?
Miles, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. No, I got another caller waiting. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Steve in West Virginia. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I just got two quick things again for you today. The first is I want to tell you, you know, I'm a low-level employee with the Department of Transportation, but before I did that and moved out to West Virginia near the Panhandle, I was a 7-Eleven franchisee for a little over 15 years. And before you become a franchisee, you have to go to one of their schools, boot camps, you know, and they teach you how to run the store to their standards and everything. Yes. And one of the things that I'll always remember while going to this little boot camp class is that they tell you when you purchase a store, whether it's an existing store or whatever, the first thing you want to do is you want to get rid of everybody working there and start with brand new staff. You want to clean house because you don't want the culture. You don't want the culture destroyed or poisoned from the last manager or the last owner. Yep. And this is 101. Trump should have went in there and got rid of everybody. I mean, he picked Bolton. He picked all these neocons. It's his fault. He should have cleaned house. I mean, and I'm talking about cleaning house and everybody. I mean, we can remember that when during the Bush and Clinton, you know, administrations, Linda Tripp was cleaned out. You know, they moved her out. Any of these government employees can be moved. I work around a lot of government employees. In fact, I work with around and know a lot of government employees from the DOD, Department of Energy. A lot of them have telecommuting jobs. And do you know that some of them can't even get along with their other employees when they're working online? So they reassign them to other jobs. Anybody can be reassigned. You don't even have to take the job away from them. You just reassign them to another department. And Trump could have done that with all these people and gotten rid of all the snakes. And he didn't do it. And, you know, I mean, I don't
you need to recall that a lot of those Trump presidential appointments were paybacks for favors done for him for his campaign, especially like Sheldon Adelson with all the money that he poured on in. This gives Sheldon Adelson, you know, the ability to say to Trump, I want you to put these people into your cabinet. And as a result, we got another neocon cabinet underneath a less than neocon president. But you're right. At any point, Trump can basically fire them. Maybe there is something dramatic on the horizon that's about to happen. And like I said before, right now my prevailing theory is that Trump understands the economy is not going to hold together until this time next year. And the only way he's going to be able to win re-election, if he actually wants to win re-election, he's going to have to do something really dramatic to convince the American people that there's a new Donald Trump in town.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, though, I want to point out something. Sheldon Adelson didn't start out, you know, supporting Trump. He started out supporting Ted Cruz. So it's the American people. The Trump supporters are the one that got Trump elected, not Sheldon Adelson. Because
Sheldon Adelson had to switch from Ted Cruz to Donald Trump because Ted Cruz cannot be president of the United States of America. I mean, they tried to sell that one to the American people, and everybody said, no, he's born in Canada. He's a natural-born Canadian citizen, and therefore he does not qualify to be president of the United States of America.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there, but at the same time, the Trump supporters, the call into your show, they are the ones that got Trump elected, not Sheldon Adelson.
Well, I think it was more a case of the callers into the show are the ones who got Hillary Clinton defeated, because it obviously took her by surprise. She really thought she had it in the bag. That's why today she's talking about, well, 2020 is going to be a rematch of 2016.
Yeah, Mike, I got one other quick thing. I've mentioned this before, like on the Duran and the X22 report. I don't know if you've looked at any of these sites lately, but what they're doing now is they're offering it's like a poll. Should Trump be elected? And then when you click on no, it immediately goes to like a donation thing where you donate to Trump. So it's like a push pull in a way, but it's for donations. And what they're doing is these sites, they're just trying to get donations for Trump. So essentially they're working for Trump. And I don't trust those sites. I don't trust them. And when I see a site like that, I don't listen to the news anymore because they're biased for Trump. You know what I'm saying? And
well, there are polls actually going in both directions now, and yes, they're money-making opportunities, and we don't know where the money is really going to. I am looking forward to getting my internet back here so that I can get my main machine back up and running and do some much-needed maintenance on the website. Anyway, Steve, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, it's, there's few people on your calling to your show that have been more on Trump than me. But let's be clear here. Trump didn't get us into Syria. This is not a mess of his making. That's right. It's not his mess. This mess was made by Obama. It was made by Hillary Clinton, John Kerry.
Yes.
All right. So, Syria wasn't his mess. Yemen wasn't his mess.
Yes.
What he didn't do was he didn't go into Syria in a bigger way than Obama did. He didn't fall, as your other caller said, for all the gassing and all that stuff and limit it to just the cruise missiles, which are bad enough, but still a lot less than what could have been.
They did try and blow up that air base. They weren't very good at it. In fact, that was a huge embarrassment because it basically showed the world that America's, cruise missiles aren't very accurate.
Well, he also wasn't him that went into Libya. It wasn't him it was him that said no, apparently 13 minutes before the alleged strike on Iran. He said no to that. So Trump is a bloviating blowhard and an egomaniac and all the things and ineffective, but let's face it, he didn't get
I feel a certain kinship with him on that.
This is a positive move for whatever. It probably is for the wrong. He's probably doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. But whatever it is, it's the right thing this time, and we ought to embrace it because we're not going to get too many times when look at the people who are attacking him from what's your name?
He's getting it from all sides. He's getting it from all sides.
The Zionists, Israel, the neocons. Look who the people are. The same people who wanted to get us in and did get us in there are the same people who wanted us to stay in there. So,
they're making money. It's all about the money. They're making huge amounts of money. Trump himself said it. The military-industrial complex is very powerful. They like having all that money pouring in on them, and that's why they want to keep these things going. It's a perpetual war machine for perpetual profit.
Well, and this is a fundamental wrench in the works for the Israeli expansion thing, because without a permanent American, which means they can control it, presence in Syria, that really limits what they can do about dismembering Syria. And now they're going to have to cozy up to Turkey to dismember Syria. A lot harder to control Turkey, apparently, than it is the United States for Israel and her fifth column.
What we're hearing from Israel's foreign ministry is they're changing their approach to the Middle East, where they basically want to start engaging in non-aggression pacts with their neighboring countries, and that would include Syria. And I think the issue, of course, they don't consider Palestine a country, so that's not going to apply to that. But I think it's basically that Israel has come to realize that America's military might isn't invincible. There have been just too many embarrassments, like, completely missing the key buildings in that air base in Syria. the complete failure to protect that Saudi refinery with our latest and greatest air defense systems, the problems with the Zumwalt self-destroyer, the Gerald R. Ford. I mean, at this point, the rest of the world has to be looking at America and saying, these guys are putting out junk. We cannot entrust our safety and security to the United States of America any longer.
Well, Michael, listen, the Israelis, they're absolutely, they can't project power 5,000 meters from their border. They couldn't even go to the Litani
They don't
River.
need to. They've got nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when they tried to invade us, when fought Hezbollah in 2006. I mean, so the fact of the matter is, Israel won't put skin in the game because they can get us to do it, and now they can't get us to do it, at least as easily.
That's right.
And so they're really scared. Look at the people who are against it, Lindsey Graham, and all all the people like Chuck Schumer, and all the entire fifth column is up in arms about this. But this is the right thing, and if we can get out of there, maybe we can get out of going to war with Iran, which they want us to do too.
I think that's going to happen if we basically pull out of Syria. It's going to be perceived by the world as a loss. It's going to be perceived by the American people as a defeat rivaling that of Vietnam. And I think the American people are going to lose their taste for any further military adventures.
And Israel's non-aggression pact thing is basically throwing up the bulwarks. They want to be able to launch as a launching pad in case there's a military action against Iran. They want to be able to use the Emirates and so on in Saudi Arabia. And two, they want to use them as a buffer for their own. But their plans never involve their own troops. It's always ours or somebody else.
That's why they did so poorly in Lebanon.
That's right. They'll fight to the last American, and that's right. They won't even. That's what I said. They couldn't invade. They couldn't advance 5,000 meters, a 5K, from their border before Hezbollah kicked their rear end.
They're really good at abusing Palestinians, but they're not really an effective military force-on-force fighting unit.
So that's their thing. They won't put skin in the game, and they simply won't fight. They won't fight. That's their thing. And so they have to get other people to do it for them, and that's been our role. And maybe this is turning it back.
Israel loves to play. Let's you and him fight.
That's right. That's their foreign policy. In one line, that's it. But anyway, so let's applaud Trump for doing this and back him on this. I mean, he may be doing it for the wrong reasons, but it is the right thing.
Bringing the troops home, I just think that there are going to be repercussions that Trump has not considered. And I would love to see the war in Iran called off because of this. And it very well might be. But again, if anybody from the United States Secret Service Protective Detail is listening to my show, drink lots of coffee, because presidents who anger the military-industrial complex tend to have shortened lifespans. And it's happened before.
Can I make one more point?
Yeah, one more point.
Can I make one more point here? Look at this from Israel's point of view, who's been able to get us to do all their dirty work. First off, and Saudi Arabia is collapsing. That 3 brigade and 1 armored regiment that just completely got trashed. They're falling militarily and politically falling apart. Then Syria, we're pulling out of Syria. They couldn't get us to go to war. Trump apparently resisted enough to not go to war directly with Iran. They must be freaking panicking. And because their foreign policy, let's you and him fight, is now visibly failing. And the only next step, if they can't get us to do it, is to do it themselves. And good luck with that. But nevertheless, they got to be panicking. And so they're going to use every single bit of pressure they have with their fifth column that has run our foreign policy for 40 years. And it's going to be something. So.
Well, I think, I mean, again, Israel's got the ace in the hole with their nuclear weapons. But Iran, while Iran does not have nuclear weapons and never did, they do have those long-range ballistic missiles that they could aim at the locations where Israel stores their nuclear weapons. And that could cause a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. And by the way, it's clear that they don't even need the Straits of Hormuz, because that last attack on the refineries means that they can go right to the source.
That's right.
So
they can just shut it down.
And if they can do that, then maybe they can also hit the reactor at Dimona or what have you, because they went right through the most sophisticated air defenses that we could put up anyways.
I don't know that they're going to bother with. I mean, they might go after Dimona, but apparently Dimona has developed some serious leakage problems, and even Israel is saying it's time to tear it down and replace it.
Oh, that's what a shame. Couldn't happen to a nicer spot.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope that's all right. Well, Mike, that's it. I got to roll off here, but let's applaud the guy, even if it's for the wrong reasons. He's doing the right thing.
I agree he's doing the right thing. I just think that there are going to be consequences he has not yet considered. Anyway, Peter, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Doreen in Vancouver. Aloha, Doreen. Thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
This is Lenny from Los Angeles.
This is supposed to be Doreen in Vancouver. Did we lose Doreen?
I'm still here.
Okay, Doreen, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, I wanted to talk about the carbon tax. Dustin made a comment that that's what it's all about. And that's what it really is. This global warming thing is all about carbon tax. And why I know, I pay a little over 12% on my heating bill. In British Columbia, they brought this tax thing out a few years ago. And this ex-premier, he said, we're not going to pay that extra tax. We're not going to do this. And he sent a referendum around the province, which cost a lot of money. He had all the people concentrating on this rollback of tax. And in the meantime, the Premier Campbell was in the back door pushing in that carbon tax. Campbell, since he got the carbon tax through, he is now in the embassy in London with a cushy, nice little job for the last few years. That's where he's been. But some people say to me, some people say to me, oh, I don't pay carbon tax. I said, have you ever looked at your heating bill that comes in every month from the gas company? And they go, no. I said, it's all on their delivery, and we pay. I have a small 2-bedroom rancher, and I pay a little over 12%, and it's written right there, carbon tax. That's why they're fighting it in Ontario. They know. Can you imagine if everybody in America that was heating their property paid 12% tax, and that money, it doesn't stay in the country, it goes to a bank in London. So, it is, and I often wondered, how are they going to take this new world order and get the people in order? And when I saw Monday, when they're all training themselves, and we're only going to live 12 years and all that, I thought, that's how they're going to do it, because Piers Corbyn, who is Jeremy Corbyn's brother, the opposition in the UK, he's out there. He's a meteorologist, and he's out there saying it's all a sham. He's telling the people they're trying to kill you, and they're taking your money, and he's getting vulgar insults, and they just won't listen ever since that girl got on. And that's one thing I said about Trump. He's against it. We got to give him credit for that. Trump is against the carbon tax because he knows where it's going and what it's for. And also Trump, I know he hasn't done everything, but I listened to Simon Parks. He has a website, and he said Trump is going to pull off something in a few days of like arresting and charging people. And for what to do,
I'll believe that when I see it.
American first.
I'll believe that when I see it.
I know.
That's what
I said. It's honest. But Dustin is right. And please, everybody, I am proof. I pay a little over 12% of my little rancher in carbon tax, and you find out where that's going. Can you imagine all the people how many people in America is going to have to pay that? They're fighting it in Ontario.
It's not just your power bill. I mean, there's carbon tax applied to commercial retail products at the supermarket because of their carbon impact, and it's a huge scam. And it all got started by Al Gore back in the 1990s when the world actually was warming up a little bit. And then, of course, in the early 2000s, when all of a sudden Mother Nature flipped around and started going the other direction, and everybody panicked and said, we've got this sweet deal going. We're selling carbon credits. We're going to get carbon taxes. We're going to get people to let us control their lives to save Mother Earth, and we've got to do something. And that's when all the frauds and the hoaxes came out from like Hadley CRU and NASA and NOAA, not to mention this endless series of TV programs on so-called educational channels that were out there saying, the world is going to end unless you give the government more of your money in obedience, which is, that's really what it's all about. The government is desperately broke. They're $22 trillion in debt. And they don't want to just raise taxes because that's a very unpopular thing to do going into an election year. So they got to find some other way to get money from you, some kind of a tariff, some kind of a levy, some kind of a way of scaring you into saying, yes, okay, you can have the last $5 out of my pockets if it means saving planet Earth. And you're right. They have found and recruited this young lady because she's very presentable on TV, and it's a celebrity war. They don't want you listening to real scientists and experts who are saying that it really is a load of nonsense. I mean, there's like these 500 climate scientists are all out there saying it's really nonsense. But the corporate media finds this one really cute girl, and she gets up at the UN and she makes this speech about how we're all going to die, and now they're going to give her the Nobel Peace Prize. It's just,
Well, we got to thank Trump for that. We have to give him credit for that. He said no to carbon tax. God bless him for that. Can you imagine? He has some good points, and I don't think he's finished yet. He hasn't finished his job. Please, God, don't let Hillary go in. But if Trump,
don't get me started. I can't afford to buy a new laptop.
Yeah. Anyway, I think Trump is trying to do his best, and I know with Trump, everybody wants him to do this and that, but I believe he believes in America first. He's a true American before he's anybody else. Anyway, Mike, you sound a lot better health-wise, and you're settling in so nice. And I'm glad you and Claire are enjoying Indiana, and have a good show.
Enjoying it right now.
Thing. If Layla is out there, can she get in touch with us? Because we all used to like listening to Layla. She had a lot to say.
I've gotten a lot of emails about that.
Yeah, I'd like her input on our up in Canada now. Our
Doreen, I got to let you go. Got to take a break.
Okay, Mike.
Other callers waiting online. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And finally, we're going to get to Lenny in California. Lenny, thank you for waiting so patiently to get on the air. What's on your mind?
A few things. First, I want to give a shout out to Peter, Miles, and the caller from Florida. 2 calls before Miles. I didn't catch his name, but I thought they were great callers and job well done. Now, I heard you say earlier that Israel now they want to, they're signing agreements to get along with their neighbors.
They're starting to sign non-aggression pacts. This is coming from the foreign ministry, and apparently it's with the approval of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is still trying to form a new government.
Yeah, I don't think he has it within his nature to be peaceful with anybody. All right, but
I would agree.
And I wanted to say, I don't think I don't think he's doing it out the goodness of his heart. This is more like forced attrition because everything he's tried is blown up in his face, and deservedly so. But to Jim from Illinois,
is doing this. I think Netanyahu is doing this because he's lost confidence that the United States military can intervene to protect Israel. If you look at all the goof-ups lately, the F-22 can be spotted on Russian radar. The Germans are able to track the F-35. You had Yemen. You had the Houthis who came in and blew right past America's best air defense system to hit that refinery. And, everybody around the world's got to be saying, the American military-industrial complex, they're producing junk. And we're supposed to basically make agreements with this country to protect us.
Yeah, but even more telling than that, if you really take a look at it, Putin knew, Turkey knew,
yes,
Trump knew that, and even Iran knew, and Assad knew that Turkey was going to make this move. But I think it's very telling that Israel didn't know. That is very telling. Okay, but to get back to what Jim from Illinois.
I got to be very honest. I think that probably Israel did know. They just didn't make a big public statement about. Because that Mossad.
Well,
let's give credit where credit is due. Let's give credit where credit is due.
They have tendency to know everything about everybody. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. For all we know, these Kurds went over and spent a weekend at Jeff Epstein's place in the Caribbean.
And they probably did. Okay, the leaders anyway. That's why a lot of them are getting off to Europe now, while the people are suffering. But to Jim from Illinois, as far as some Republicans and some Democrats both being up in arms over what Trump is doing, I can name some that aren't very prominent. Rand Paul is in total agreement with what Trump is doing. Okay, yes. Tulsi Gabbard is in total agreement with what Trump is doing. Then you got your normal flipping politicians like occasional Cortez. Now, after all this time of saying we need to pull our troops out of all these wars, now all of a sudden she's saying, not because she truly believes it, okay, because she's being told to say it, that, Trump is making a big mistake, all right? But, as far as the evangelicals are concerned, I could care less what Pat Robertson says anyway. But I will tell you this.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah,
okay.
But can you hold me, man? I got some points I need to make.
Lenny, stay on the line. I'm going to hold you through the station identification, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are, they're kind of jammed up, but the number is still open, 800-313-9443. We're talking with Lenny in California, and we're talking about how a lot of politicians who were originally opposed to the wars have now flip-flopped over, like Alexandria occasionally has a Cortex. And it's not like she has to be told what to say here, because I'm certain that when all these wars got started, members of Congress went over to their stockbroker and say, buy Boeing, buy General Dynamics, buy, McDonnell Douglas, buy anybody who makes stuff that kills, because we're gonna get rich doing this thing. And I think we're going to find out that Trump is not going to get a lot of support for what he's doing, primarily because he's cutting into the wallets of a lot of his own GOP supporters. And again, I want to be clear. I absolutely agree. We need to get our kids out of these war zones, get them back here, put them to work on that border, put them to work on fixing the high-tension towers at PG&E. Just find things for them to remember. FDR and his jobs program. We need to bring that back. Okay, we need to stop printing up money out of thin air and spending it on stuff that explodes because you don't get a return on that. And we need to start reinvesting. Trump promised to make America great again. This is a good way to start. End the wars, bring these kids home, and create jobs for them, on the highways, the bridges, the rails, and start kicking out all these illegals who shouldn't be here in the first place. So I'm in agreement with what Trump has done. I'm in agreement with what Trump has done. I think, though, there are going to be repercussions that he hasn't considered, that his advisors haven't considered. And I'll be very honest, I wish absolutely no harm to the man. But I would not be surprised if there was an assassination attempt on him.
Was going to be that anyway. Anybody's tried to come here and do any resemblance of good. That's always happened. But to get back to the evangelicals, okay, to Jim in Illinois, you got your sellout soul sellers like Pat Robertson, but you've got another group of evangelicals who are promising the Democrats that if there is an impeachment of Donald Trump, they are going to have a proper civil war on their hands. And these old boys can't wait to get to practicing that old-time religion. All right? So
I hope
they
not.
need to be really careful. They need. Well, I'm just telling you what I'm.
No, I'm hearing it from
other
sources.
my information.
I'm hearing it from other sources as well. It's just, a big part of why I do what I do and have been doing it since 1994 is to avoid a bloody revolution or civil war in the streets of this country because the wrong people get killed and crippled in these things. And I know that because the first Civil War, I had family on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line. And, they lost limbs. Yeah. But real quick, let me say this, because this is how I think is going down as we speak. From what I'm reading, the Kurds are on the phone with Putin, and they're saying to Putin, we want to negotiate with Assad in Damascus. Okay? And yes,
but they're
that's
saying,
actually, that's their smartest move.
Yeah, but they should have done that a long time ago. But they're saying, but we want our own state. We want our own state within, the land of Syria. And Putin is saying, call me back when you're serious. That's how it's going down. So I think eventually they're going to get what they want. Everybody's going to get what they want. And that's why Israel is really making, friendly agreements toward everybody else. But I agree with Trump. If people want to start wars, you willing to go send your own people to fight for wars you started, go for it. But you have no right to send by any other people's sons and daughters and have them killed for what you want out of life. So, thank you for your time, Mr. Rivero.
All right, you've got it. Basically, the thing that occurs to me that Putin might conceivably do, a lot of people are not aware of this, but out on the eastern part of Russia, which is the world's largest country, they got lots of room there. There's actually, they call it the second Israel. And it's basically a nation within a nation. The people follow the Jewish faith. They speak Hebrew. I think Putin could make this whole problem go away by just saying, here, we're going to give you this chunk of land. We're not using it. There's nothing there but trees, and, you can build some light industry and homes. And, if I were Putin, I would actually give that serious consideration. Okay, let's go back to the phones here to Todd in Long Beach. Aloha, Todd. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Did we lose Todd? We lost him. All right, so let's go to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. Hey, if you did that wouldn't be very fair to Native Americans out there who actually live on the land now and have been there for thousands of years. I mean, the native Siberians. They actually are Native Americans. Where Native Americans come from. So,
well, if you go back to the land bridge theory, technically it's correct. Actually, there was another genetic study that showed that the Native Americans were actually more Asian than Russian.
Yeah, but Siberia is Asian. If you look at the people there, they're very Asian looking. I mean, look at the defense minister.
They definitely are.
He's definitely Asian looking, right? But anyway, I just wanted to say, about what we were saying about Israel maybe trying to make peace with his neighbors and all that, and why.
Yep.
One thing about the Mossad, they may be a lot of things, but one thing they're not is stupid. Okay, they have spies all over the place, especially in this country, and they watch.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty stupid of them to walk into that hotel in Saudi Arabia with stolen passports and assassinate that guy on closed-circuit television. That didn't exactly impress anybody.
They know how to spy. They don't know how to do anything else. And they don't even
well,
have to do spying.
they're aggressive about that. You need to hunt down a book. You need to hunt down a book called By Way of Deception by a former Mossad agent named Viktor Ostrovsky. He lives in Arizona now. He's an artist. He's got his own art gallery. But, I mean, he talks about some of the Mossad's biggest mess-ups, and they've had their share.
Yeah, but, I mean, all they have to do is watch some of the online shows and the comments. Not only online, some of the, even in, other comments on news, but especially online. And you look at the comments, how many people are disgusted with the United States constantly backing up Israel, risking the lives of our troops, Israel's interest, and all that other stuff. They see that. They got to see that. I mean, I think they're starting to get the message.
Well, I mean, obviously they're getting the message. I mean, they're passing all these laws to literally make it a criminal offense to criticize the government of Israel. This cuts right at the heart of our First Amendment, and it is angering to me to see the United States Congress, the Congress of the United States of America, willing to take a meat axe to our founding principle to please a foreign government. But I think the reason they did it, it was a panic reaction, because everybody's criticizing Israel these days.
Yeah, and on top of that, if you notice, for instance, in any of these Democratic debates so far, they're not having people come up there, we must support our great friend Israel, blah, 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 no, you're not seeing that this time, okay? They're avoiding that. So, like I said, I think they're seeing that. You can pass all the laws you want. First of all, never pass constitutional muster. Sooner or later, the Supreme Court's going to throw all that out.
That's true. Sooner or later, the Supreme Court would take that on.
People are ignoring it anyway. So I think they see the handwriting on the wall. They can't count in this country anymore,
what you were saying before, Mark, what you were saying before about the candidates not getting up there and saying, we need to support our great friend Israel. Actually, most candidates right now literally run two campaigns. One for us naive, trusting Americans, and then another one that is targeted very much on the Jewish vote. It'll have all the wonderful things the candidate's done for Israel, and they're trying to literally keep them separated now.
Yeah, well, they're trying, but it's not, it's not like they're, like you watch the Republican debate, and all they're saying, I remember 2016, what was that woman, that rich woman who ran a company? She ran a computer company.
She ran Hewlett Packard for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She had some kind of Italian last name, but I forgot what it was. But anyway, first thing she comes up, first thing she says, the first thing I would do as president and call up Benjamin Netanyahu and tell him what he needs. What he needs to defend his country. Something like that, all right? The first thing I'll do, and then others chipped in and all that. You don't see that this time in the Democratic, as far as the Democrats go. The only one who keeps on shouting that the kind of stuff is Trump, who says, well, if you go against Israel, you're an anti-Semite, and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But even Trump seems to be now, he has to have a lot of pressure.
He's not selling
what he did. Yeah,
and
with those Kurds, because I'm saying, because the Kurds are considered like another form of Israel. That's what a lot of people are saying, that they're very similar to Jews and all that, and they want their own country. They're nomadic people, and I know they're supported by the Mossad. So he had to be in a lot of pressure to do what he did. He did it anyway. I guess he decided, we're not going to go to war with Turkey over this. He's not going to do it. We're not going to risk American lives like that. And that's a good thing, I think, I mean, Turkey is could really be a tough opponent. I mean, they got a big army. Turkey, they probably could whip any of the European countries today, whip their butts in a war. I'm not talking about Russia, of course. I'm talking about like Germany, France,
Well,
probably
don't
even
forget,
England.
a lot of those EU nations now have nuclear weapons themselves, so I don't think it would be quite that one-sided. The Turks are fierce fighters. They have that reputation going back all the way to, the end of the Ottoman Empire. And it is because of that reason I'm still saying, while I agree with bringing our troops home, I still think this could spin wildly out of control. Anyway, Mark, we're going to let you go here because Todd in Long Beach called back in. We'd somehow lost him before. And so, Todd, what's on your mind? Todd, are you there? Going once.
I'm here. Thank you.
Oh, there you are. I was
Sorry.
about to put your face on a milk carton.
Yeah. No, I want. As a former U.S. Marine, I still have contacts. One of mine got out after 27 years. But we talk about the excessive spending, and
yes.
the military, the police, and of course, school are super high end on absconding and not telling the truth where the money sits and where they're
yes.
spending it. Let me take one example from each. Education first. It was known that LA school district had thousands upon thousands of cell phones they were paying for, and nobody was using them. Okay?
Yeah.
That's an example, just one example, one place, one state, one county, one city. Multiply that times whatever California has, and there you go for that. Now, for the military, my friend worked as a what they call end of the year blow away, meaning he called it blow away time. He took all the year ends. He told me they had to shoot all those rounds, and we're talking tens of thousands, whatever they may be, 50 cal, 30 cal, 223, whatever it may be, and all the way up to the howitzers. And they would shoot all that up. So needlessly, there's no need for that.
Well, their need is that if they don't use it all up, then their budget gets cut the next year. I went through the same thing with NASA. We'd get to the end of the fiscal year, and they're telling us, use up the computer time. Play a computer game or something. Use it all up, because if we don't use it all up, they will take it away next year. And that is an institutional phenomenon that we're seeing throughout the entire government, throughout all of NASA.
It's called over-budgeted, and it's like I have a friend that also was involved in NASA, and he has a friend that was the creator of the exploding bolts, and that dude made serious bank. I mean, crazy money. And and I said that's why it's all a scam, all of it, because they over-budgetize. And then it's like you said, what did you call them long before? The money junkies. They can never get enough. It will never be enough. And nor will there, when you have a military like ours that is just obfuscating and blackballing every single expenditure and not telling the truth to really basically anybody, neither you or I are ever going to see the truth of the end of it until perhaps Jesus reveals it all. But in my opinion, if I may be so bold as to maybe think along the lines, I think there's enough people that have literally have had it, and they're ready to blow the whistles, and they're ready to say, we're at enough is enough. And I hear it only on your show, because I do listen to other shows. John B. Wells is one that I listen to later on in the night. And, I'm just beginning to think that, we now see and hear the construct that was laid out under a constitution. I hear things in the word alone, that says that it's a con job. I don't believe in the Constitution anymore. I don't believe in any of it, because if there was a Constitution and there was laws of the land, then perhaps we would see immediately 30%, minimum 30% of Congress arrested for treason. And that alone bears execution because of them bearing in on a high stakes with public life, and therefore life and limb.
Well, that's why they're trying to take all the guns away, is because they're recognizing the American people have reached a breaking point.
I believe so, and I believe that many of your callers, you know, like Dustin and others that call in, I don't see what they're fighting about, to be honest. Everybody's on the same page. We may have different ideas and variances of outcomes that we personally maybe would like to see, but even all our ideas are flawed unless, you know, like wisdom says, collective minds seek wisdom collectively. And when that happens, you know, you see good things happen, Mike. I'm glad. Let me say a couple praises here. I'm glad you're getting your health back, okay? You're deep in my prayers. I hope others are saying the same thing. I'm hoping that you're looking at alternative medicines and such for your health to negate.
You know, Claire's the queen of the vitamin closet, and I let her take care of me. But one of the advantages that we have here in Indiana is that we do have some medical professionals, and one of them has correctly identified and diagnosed and is treating what was really bothering me. And I can see the improvement. People can see the improvement. I'm getting all kinds of emails saying that, yeah, whatever you're doing, it worked, so we're going to keep on doing that.
Good. And, you know, I do think that YouTube has got to be suppressing the amount of people that are watching you. It's ridiculous. I
know they are. I know they are. And, you know, I noticed a funny thing on Google the other day. Actually, I'm going to have to hold you over this next commercial break here, but I've got to share a story from Google. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Todd in Long Beach. We're talking about military spending, and I think that a good overview of why it's evolved to be the system that it has evolved to be lies in this sort of cultural belief that the more you spend on the military, the more powerful you are. Now, we already know from recent embarrassments like the Gerald R. Ford, that's not necessarily true. Again, there's a lot of politics and money involved, but a lot of this goes back to the British HMS Dreadnought, which was the first modern steel battleship. Prior to that, they were still square-rigged, wooden-timbered ships. Some had steam engines. And this prompted President Theodore Roosevelt to commission what he called the Great White Fleet, which was 16 ships, all steel, and literally sailed around the world to basically showcase American naval power, and it woke the world up. The world said, okay, we got to pay attention to the United States. They've got a modern Navy, and they can shoot large holes in other people's property. And so ever since then, we're saying, you know, the Pentagon thinking is more money means more victory, more wars. I'm sure that North Korea and Vietnam were considered aberrations, as it were. But I think we're reaching the point right now where the American people, first of all, more and more Americans are now aware that the income tax is just another fraud, that the 16th Amendment was never actually ratified. And it's just our government has turned into this criminal military enterprise of sucking as much wealth out of the hands of the American people as possible and using it to project more power around the rest of the world. You know, it says money wins elections, money also wins war.
You know, Mike, one of the things that, if you can hear me, hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Clive Cussler wrote a book about Hull 44, I think it was called, on the World War I, where the dreadnoughts first started coming out.
Yes.
And how that was a factor in how all kinds of agents were really at that time going all over the world. The Japanese were spying on the Germans and the English and the U.S., and the U.S. was spying on everybody else. And this technology, you notice it all, boom, came all out at once. Everybody produced their warships all out at once.
Well, the same thing happened when the United States developed nuclear weapons. Everybody was spying on each other, trying to get the secrets of the nuclear weapons. The Rosenbergs sold us out to the Russians, and then China got it from Russia.
We were sold out a long time ago. And if you listen to George Webb's work, I like how he has intricated all the name players on who has sold what to who, and it's been going on for a long time.
Yes, it has. For as long as we've been a country, this stuff has been going on.
And it's all backdoor deals. It's not for us. It has no bearing on the taxpayer. And I believe that they ought to just get rid of the entire tax code and destroy the IRS. It's not needed. Destroy the Federal Reserve and do what, like if you have the coins, great, but everything needs to go back on a gold and silver standard.
I would
perhaps copper and some other metals.
Because that's how this country was started, and it was started to work for the American people and for the country. But over time, it's been hijacked by the money junkies, by the military-industrial complex, and just turned into this perpetual scam of grabbing more and more money. And let me ask you a very simple question. Okay, except for the Bretton Woods Agreement, what did the United States actually get out of World War II? I mean, what did the American people, let's forget about Bretton Woods and let's forget about the money junkies and stuff. What did the American people, how did they benefit from the 2 world wars we've had so far? A lot of people got killed and crippled. It didn't make their lives better. It made their lives worse. In a lot of cases, they came back home missing limbs. A lot of them came back home having lost their properties to failed mortgages. And they were all supposed to make do with the fact that they were, hey, you survived. We're going to give you a little medal here of shining gold, and you're a hero, and we're going to treat you like a hero. They were played for fools. They were played for suckers.
Right from the get-go, because everybody that has been studying this now knows that FDR, the big gold grabber from the Japanese, that prompted the Japanese to go west into China and use Korea as a pony dog to do some of their lickings for them, hence the Nanking incident.
Yes.
But we've been played, and we've been played hard. And Trump's, I think, he's pointing out the fact that China has stolen patents year after year and has never paid one country one dime.
And they're still doing it.
So really,
they're still doing it. It's another promise that Trump made that he hasn't kept.
I would propose this, Mike. Make $1 trillion coin, make 100 of them, and give them to China.
All right. Well, listen, we got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. We got another caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones here to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. I guess you wanted some kind of a response. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, Mike, I want to respond to the Chinese, the evil Chinese stealing our secret. But I got to respond, Lenny. Lenny's right on with everything, pretty much. And he's also right on. But, Mike, what's going on is the Israelis and the Saudis use us as a proxy army, just like we use the Kurds and the ISIS as a proxy army. And you know what happened in Yemen, Mike, was the Saudis were using the Pakistani Wahhabis as a proxy army, and they got wiped out.
Yes.
That's what happened. So
did not work out all
using
that
everybody
here.
else's.
Yeah, they are.
They
and I want to back
out.
up here a little bit because I know that China is being demonized for intellectual property violations, but it's not like they're the only ones who are doing it. Everybody is stealing technology from everybody else because that's where the big money lies. I mean, that's how Jeff Epstein
that's what makes me laugh, Mike.
That's how Jeff Epstein was able to lure all of these people like Stephen Hawking, down to his island in the Caribbean because they wanted the billionaires wanted to meet these people and pick their brains for the latest ideas.
You ever notice though, like on Fox News? Well, Russia. I'm not the. Even Tucker called. Oh, I would want to live in Russia. Like they always come. You ever notice they always will demonize somebody else? Well, I don't want to live there anyway. But I'm like, people do though, and they ain't got a problem. It's only the people in another side of the world that don't like that because they're in their way of global hegemony. That's what it's about.
Well, no. It's a little more subtle than that. It's about trying to convince the American people that we are still the greatest nation on earth, and these other places are really terrible and they're suffering, and they're always going to be shown in a negative light. But I'll tell you, I had the very good fortune earlier on in my career to do a lot of traveling around the world, a lot of work. I got to work in places like Milan and Munich and Rome and London and Sydney, Australia, Hollywood, obviously, Honolulu, Seattle. And the one thing I learned, especially in those European countries, is they're not as bad as we are told that they are. In fact, life was actually very, very nice in a lot of these places. It was very, very pleasant. But the goal of the corporate media is to keep you convinced that this is the best place on earth for you to live so that you don't leave. Because a lot of Americans are, in fact, renouncing their citizenships and they're leaving for places like Costa Rica.
Mike, aren't you patriotic? Come on, don't you carry the Hong Kong, those great liberal college kids are burning their own businesses and smashing cameras, and they're bringing democracy to Hong Kong. Don't you care about that? See, this is the fraud. Like, we're all going out supporting the Hong Kong people. No, you're supporting like basically Antifa in Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Now, Hong Kong, as a matter of fact, there's an organization there, and it is called, let's see, the Hong Kong Legal Exchange Foundation. A guy named Lawrence Y.K. Mala is chairman and director of the China Law Society. And basically they're out there saying that, yes, there is no question. All of these upsets that we're seeing in Hong Kong are being sponsored by the United States. The United States wants to regime change all of China, and they're going to start by ripping Hong Kong off the way they did Crimea.
But it ain't going to work. And remember in Ukraine, they killed 38 police officers. They used neo-Nazis, which is real Nazis, like they use Wahhabis in Syria to get their job done. So nobody call in and say, oh, the Chinese are stealing all. Are you kidding me? This country is an empire. We steal everybody's intellectual property. So did the British. So
China didn't have to steal it. China didn't have to steal it. American corporations gave it to them to manufacture more cheaply. And then they started, saying, well, hey, we're supposed to be making all the money off of this cheap Chinese labor. And that's where the argument really sprang from. But, China didn't have to steal the technology. It was handed to them on a silicon plate.
And that's the trade-off. If you want to do business in China, you got to give up some of your technological information. That's it. If you don't want to do business there, then you're not going to be able to manufacture there. That's their rules. If you don't like it, manufacture in Singapore or something. Yeah, it's not going to be as cheap.
And it's not just China. There's a lot of countries right now. When they do multinational deals with American companies, there'll be provisions within the contract for technology offset that will say, we will help you build this, but we're going to get the plans to build this particular component. Usually it's something very critical. And then all of a sudden, they've moved their industry forward where they're now able to make things they weren't able to make before. And it's perfectly legal. It's not stolen. In fact, Michael Crichton had a book called Airframe, and it sort of came and went. But if you can find a copy at the used bookstore, they talk about this, the globalist economy, that, we're ripping apart this American-based aircraft company, and we're spreading the contracts out all over the globe, and everybody gets a technology offset, and get with the program kind of thing.
And before I get off the phone, Mike, is China that communist where did they bail out General Motors or bail out Wall Street and the bankers and send the American serf people the bill? No, your own government did. So why don't you look at your own government before you rip on somebody's like thousands of miles away? That's all I got to say, Mike. Have a good night.
No, I would absolutely agree. I mean, China believes in the principle. You're either going to make it or you're not. And unfortunately, we have politicians who, in exchange for a small campaign donation, will loot the American people to bail out these companies that are simply not making it because they've forgotten how to manufacture a good product, or they just don't even care about it anymore. All right, back to the phones here to Jim in New York. Aloha, Jim. Thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Forget what politicians say. It's what they do that matters.
Yes.
This Trump, quote, pull out of Syria, is it just more smoke and mirrors? I mean, under the Trump administration, troops have increased significantly in Syria.
Yep.
Is Trump is he even in control of foreign policy? I don't think so.
I would hope that he certainly was not in control of foreign policy when Bolton was in office. Unfortunately, he's sort of tapped Bolton light to take over. And I think it's one of the reasons why people like Tucker Carlson are saying Trump really isn't interested in doing the job of being the president. He just likes being the president.
Yeah, I guess he just likes to be the latest puppet. And it seems, he says great things that resonate with middle America, but then his administration does the exact opposite. We're still in Syria. We've increased troops. Far more troops are in Syria under Trump than under Obama.
Well, I'm not entirely sure that's accurate. I mean, we had an article earlier in the week where they were saying that so far only about 50 U.S. troops have been pulled out. But here's the problem from Trump's point of view. Whether he's really pulling the troops out or not, everybody around him is going to react as if he is. They're not reacting to the reality. They're reacting to the public perception.
Yes, it's public perception. It's funny, this Trump derangement syndrome, it's so bizarre. You have, quote, liberals like Alexandria Cortez, who I actually had some, quote, hope in early on. I had
the ex-bartender?
But she did make some anti-war statements early in her career.
Yeah, but
that's out the window. That's out the window. That hope is gone.
Yep.
Now she's mad at Trump not, being in Syria. She's mad at Trump because
she probably had put her entire investment portfolio into ammunition companies.
Yeah, maybe. But, just as Obama, you used to, under Bush Jr., you had an anti-war left.
Yes.
And that's gone. And I think Obama,
that's the real problem. The Democrats are just as gung-ho for war as anybody else, probably because they're making as much money as everybody else.
Yes. And Obama placated the anti-war left by his appearance. But the wars continued under him, and the anti-war left is gone. It doesn't exist anymore, pretty much. And it seems like Trump is getting liberals to want war just because it's against Trump. It's because if Trump wants
that could be. I mean,
the liberals want war.
We're being turned into the Klingon Empire.
It's very bizarre. It's like the left. If Trump acts like a peacemaker, the left attacks him.
Yes.
It's very strange.
Well, so do the neocons. Like I said, I wish no harm to come to the man or his family, but I would not be surprised if there's an assassination attempt on him.
I don't think so. I don't think, because I always been suspicious of Trump, and the reason was as far back as the debates. Now, remember how they treated Ron Paul in 2008?
Boy, do I remember that.
2012?
Yep.
Okay. Look at the difference in how they treated Ron Paul and how they treated Trump. They put Trump center stage at the debates and gave him unlimited time and free coverage. So that's the reason I've always been suspicious.
My recollection is that for the earlier debates, Trump was basically at one end of the row, but his poll numbers took off and they had to move him into the center. But they didn't start him out in the middle of the platform. He basically he came across with a message people were listening to. He's an amazingly good liar. Yeah. Well, I'll give you that much.
But I just was struck by that. Because Ron Paul, they practically had him out in the parking lot.
Yeah, I know. I wish Rand would step back on in. I wish anybody would step back on in. It's going to give us an option outside of Hillary, because at this point, I mean, she's being shoved at us. What the corporate media and the political system did in 2016, they're already doing now. They're practically getting ready to hold a funeral for Joe Biden over his stents. They're never going to let Elizabeth Warren forget about the Pocahontas, and now she's got this other one about being fired for being visibly pregnant. You'd think this lady would learn her lesson, but she hasn't. And so they're already saying that Hillary is polling in the number 3 place. Just having announced.
Remember, the Trump and the Clintons were friends. Now, I don't know if they still are after the contentious election. I don't know if they're still friends, but they were friends.
I would be very, very surprised. Well, yeah, they were. Yeah. I mean, they were all friends because they were all together in the same line of work here. But I can't imagine following the fractious 2016 campaign, the spying that was going on, the attempt to create Russiagate. I imagine that probably Trump has got a great deal of animosity towards at least Hillary Clinton, if not Bill Clinton. And I remember seeing a picture. Remember when they had this hearing where some of Bill Clinton's sex victims were put in the audience. It was during one of the debates, now that I think about it. And did you notice in the photo, he was sitting right next to Jeff Epstein? And you have to scratch your head and say, what the heck was going on there?
Yeah, but if Trump really hated Hillary, why hasn't he instructed his Justice Department to prosecute her?
She may have something on the entire U.S. government, like 9/11. I mean, she's an untouchable. There is a class of operative in this country, usually tied in with the Central Intelligence Agency, and they're considered untouchables. Clay Shaw was one. They couldn't get near him for the John F. Kennedy assassination. The Clintons are clearly untouchable. They know all about the drug dealing. And of
course,
with what Hillary knows, and the Bush family's tied in with that as well. If they were all to go public and say, just so that you know, your government is the biggest drug smuggler in this world, they could bring down the entire government with what they know. And if they were going to go public. And so that's probably what's going on there, is Hillary just called up Donald Trump and say, look, play nice, okay, or I'll tell the world who really did 9/11, and I'll just wreck the place for you. And I'm waiting for somebody to lose their temper and do precisely that. and hopefully they'll survive the attempt. But it's going to have to be a lot of people who come forward and say, because, the individuals who are out there saying, like, Sandy Hook was a hoax, and, there's a lot of people who are out there saying 9/11 was clearly a false flag, but it's not enough to build public momentum. And, but something like the fact that, the Uranium One deal, the Clinton Foundation basically ripping off the American people for all that, those tax credits that they don't deserve. Yeah, Hillary's got the goods on the U.S. government. So does Israel, for that matter.
I think there's a chance that they could have, the media could dub a rematch between Clinton and Trump.
They're already doing it. It's already being described that way.
This time Clinton wins, and that would show, well, I guess Trump and the Clintons are still friends.
Well, no, but, Hillary's already out there saying, this is a rematch. I already beat him once. I can beat him again. Hillary, you lost. Deal with it. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here. We were talking earlier about how Israeli settlers had forced their way into the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the other mosque over in Hebron, where the Israeli Defense Forces basically kept the Palestinians out of their own religious structures. Bit of an insult. But apparently Israel's Minister of the Interior says he's taking action to force Omar Barghouti, who's the co-founder of the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, out of the country. And he says, I intend to act quickly to deprive Barghouti of residency status in Israel. This is a man who does everything to harm the country and therefore must not enjoy the right to be a resident of Israel. So they're working on a legal opinion, basically to try and deport him. And as that caller mentioned earlier in the show, it does betray a certain degree of fear on Israel's part that they're losing their propaganda grip on the rest of the world. I remember, when I was a kid, there was Israel. Israel's where God was from. We read about Israel in the Bible every Sunday at Sunday school. And, we never saw what Israel was doing to the Palestinian people. But now we know. Now we know what's going on. Okay, interesting little article. This is from Middle East Monitor. What is behind Saudi Arabia's military failures? And they're talking about some of the stuff that we went over during the show today about how the Houthis just blew right past the U.S. air defense systems on 2 different oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. There was that devastating retaliatory attack by Yemeni forces, and basically says Saudi Arabia is just not a capable fighting force. For that matter, neither is Israel. That's why they get other people to do their fighting for them. That's what the United States is. Our job is to breed soldiers to fight, the wars around the rest of the world. So come on, you men and women and transgenders and everything, start cranking out those future soldiers here. North Korea says it may reconsider steps to build trust with the U.S. In other words, they're basically saying its patience has limits. They're waiting for the U.S. to do something. Either that or Kim Jong-un is playing Donald Trump one more time, but that's not going to help the situation either. And Joe Biden was bragging to New Hampshire voters, Barack and I had no scandals, not counting Benghazi and Solyndra, Fast and Furious, the IRS targeting, the wiretapping of journalists, the pallets of cash to Iran, and spying on Trump. I guess they don't really qualify as real scandals in the world of Joe Biden here. Now, the Ukrainian president has gone public yet again saying there was no blackmail. Trump did not pressure him on Burisma or Joe Biden. And in fact, Russia had already reopened the investigation last February. Okay, there's some music time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of wonderful things to share with you. And please spread the word of RBN. Get us out there any way that you can. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. We have to grow our audiences, and our audience do appear to be growing right now. I've been looking at the numbers, at least at whatreallyhappened.com. So we need your help to do that. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.